I came across an op-ed by a leftist, by a one of these kind of intellectuals who are clearly on the left. This op-ed was in the New York Times, where you'd expect it to be, and we're talking about Ezra Klein. I don't know how many people follow Ezra Klein, but Ezra Klein is one of those center-left on economics, quite a bit to the left. He once participated in a debate with John Allison in New York years and years ago. Some of you might have been there, and it was interesting. He's debated Sam Harris. He loves statistics. He loves numbers. He loves studies. He loves drowning you in data. And but he really believes in this stuff, or at least to the extent that you can believe in it, he believes in it. So, Ezra Klein is writing, and by the way, this article, is a reason to be mildly optimistic, because what is the title of the article? The title of the article is California is making liberals squirm. California is making liberals squirm. Liberals here fill in the blank for leftists. I don't like calling them liberals because I don't think they are, for the most part, liberals. But California is making the left squirm. And this is the subtitle of the article, and this says it all, really. He says, if progressivism can't work there, i.e. California, why should the country believe it can work anywhere else? And to me, that's the key. The country, the United States of America, is not radical left. It's not extreme left. The United States of America is not a progressive country. America is not a leftist country. It voted for Biden out of all the Democratic choices because he was the most centrist, the most moderate, the least progressive. Biden can't be like FDR. He doesn't have the ability, he never will be, and can't get anything past Congress. So he won't be. And there's a number of Democrats in Congress that won't let him get away with a lot of this stuff. Right? So the fact that the left is thinking about, why isn't it working in California? The fact that the left is identifying California as their failure and recognizing that that failure will ultimately cost them nationally, cost them politically, cost them morally, is, I think, important to your sense of optimism about the future. Because if the left recognizes this, and the rest of the country is certainly going to recognize it. They're going to watch it. They're going to see the incompetence. They're going to see the failure. They're going to see all the stuff go nowhere. And the only thing that can sustain left victories on a national scale, the only thing that can sustain the left's victories on a national scale is complete and utter incompetence and stupidity and everything else and adoration of Trump on the right. So the right is its own biggest enemy, just as the left at the end is the enemy for them to be successful. So what does he describe as this problem in California? Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. He talks about the fact that the school board of San Francisco, for example, has spent the last few months deciding to rename 44 different schools, including Paul Revere's school, because it is claimed that he participated in a raid on indigenous Americans. But he didn't. That's just made up BS. It was actually a raid on a British fort. So they just make up history. Or they renamed Lincoln School because Lincoln, turns out, was a racist. So he says, this is absurd. The San Francisco public schools are closed. Students haven't been to school in a year. And these idiots are worried about names of the schools. And they become, he says, a laughingstock of the entire country. And indeed, all this canceling stuff that's going on, the cancel culture, is not going to help the left. It's only going to hurt the left. People are going to look at this and say, really? This is nonsense. How many people in America actually think that Dr. Seuss should be banned? I mean, almost nobody. So it's a bubble in particular neighborhoods, in particular universities, in particular elites, in particular people who want to virtue signal and tell everybody, show everybody how good they are. But nobody takes it actually seriously, and nobody lives it. Indeed, nobody lives progressivism, which is a big argument that he makes here. Do you know, for example, in San Francisco, maybe the most leftist city in the U.S., Portland, Seattle, San Francisco. In San Francisco, right, within the city, about 48% of the city is white. Right? Now, I don't know what the other, quote, colors are, because I don't think 52 are black, 52%. So my guess is a big chunk of the population is are Asians. But 48% of the population is white. But if you look at the number of kids, the color skin of the kids who are enrolled in public schools, guess what percentage of public school kids are white? Right? These are whites who vote overwhelmingly for really far left candidates for their city council and to run the city. How many of their kids go to public schools? Well, it turns out that only 15% of white kids are enrolled in public schools. Why? Because all these progressives, all these leftists, all these progressives and leftists send their kids where? Well, they send their kids to private schools. All these rabid defenders of public education, of renaming the schools, right? These are exactly the people who want to rename the schools and support public education and more money for public education. And they all send their kids to private schools. They don't homeschool. No, there's no homeschooling. Indeed, the private schools in San Francisco have been open the entire pandemic, or mostly open. So, all these people who are advocates of closing public schools, advocates of the teachers' union, advocates of renaming the schools, all send their kids to private schools. They put Bernie Sanders signs in their yards. They put pro-teacher union signs in their yards. And their kids are going to private schools. Right? Even the mayor of San Francisco, think what's going on with the schools is absurd. If you look at adjusted for the cost of living, California has the highest poverty rate in the nation. Remember, California has a Democratic governor, a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House. Indeed, they have a supermajority in the legislature, so they can override any filibuster. They can basically pass whatever laws they want. Whatever laws they want. And as a consequence of passing all those laws, they have the highest poverty rate in the United States of America. California is a state that from 1950 to 1960 I think it's 1950, 1960, doubled its population. I mean, that's unheard of. That's just stunning. Stunning. And it wasn't from a small population and doubled. It's a massive increase. Right? And yet today, loses about 130,000 people every year. So today, it has a negative migration. People are leaving California. Leaving California. It's a state with fires that the government cannot control and the government cannot stop, although ways to stop them and to control them exist, but they don't. It's a state that had rolling blackouts, even though it's embarked on electric grid modernization. They still can't provide enough electricity for the state. So even though for the left, this is a state dominated by Democrats, but it's failing. And people know it's failing, and people are leaving. And do people really want to take that failure and do it on a national scale? Do they really want to see California all over the United States when there is now a model of what happens when the Democrats control everything? Now, California is still rich. California is still an amazing place to live if you have money. And one of the reasons I think that the Democrats have lost kind of the working people and, primarily get their support from the upper middle class and from the wealthy is exactly that. California is a pretty nice place outside of San Francisco to live. It's a fantastic place. It's productive. It's innovative. But then the government takes it, squanders it, destroys it through a variety of different acts. And even though California has some of the most robust welfare state in the country, redistributes a huge amount of money, in spite of all of that, still has the highest rate of poverty. But the poor people in California live far away from the middle class and the wealthy. So you don't have to notice them, other than where you have a lot of homelessness. California, I think I read, California has now, a quarter, 25% of all the homeless people in America are in California. And the question is why? And I think I answered this on a previous show. But two reasons. One, the cost of living is so high that a lot of people in California have lost their homes and therefore homeless. And the second reason is that the benefits are so good in quotes, because it's not good for anybody, that people from all over the country who are homeless go to California to get the benefits. They're building homes for the homeless. Well, that's one way to get more homeless people. People leave their rental properties. People leave homes they can't afford and wait for the state or the city of LA to build homes for them. Indeed, one of the reasons, there are many reasons why California is such a mess. Most of them having to do with regulations and controls. But one of the big reasons for it is the cost of housing. The cost of housing is just absurd. And it's not a bubble. It's not a bubble. It's driven by the fact that there are very few homes being built. When Gavin Newsom ran for governor in 2018, one of the promises he made on the campaign trail was the construction of 3.5 million housing units by 2025. So far, less than 200,000 out of the 3.5 million. It's got 4 more years, and maybe you can ramp it up. But unlikely. California builds fewer than 100,000 homes a year. The demand far exceeds the supply. Land use laws, zoning, all kinds of not in my backyard regulations, prohibit the ability to build homes, all kinds of homes. And of course, regulations that dictate what kind of homes can be built, make sure that low-income housing can't actually be built, not profitably. Only the state, taking a loss, can build housing that is actually low income. Because of the regulations, how many bathrooms an apartment has to have, how big the rooms have to be, and on and on and on and on and on you go. So indeed, a political party concerned about inequality, a political party concerned about poverty, a political party concerned about homelessness, is the governing party, the dominant, overwhelmingly dominant governing party, over a state that has some of the worst so-called inequality, worst rates of poverty, and the greatest homelessness problem in the entire country. They are complete and utter failures. And everybody can see it. What it illustrates is the extent to which progressive voters, vote progressive for particular politicians or political party. They talk progressive. They advertise progressive. They have it as a big label all over their stuff. And yet, they don't actually, on issue by issue, actually have a position that is progressive by their own standard. Adam says Dr. Seuss is not banned, not even in the most leftist schools in California. Only 6 clearly racist books are discontinued. Dozens are still bedtime reading. So I disagree with you, Adam. Yes, you're right. They're not banned. Although eBay will not allow those 6 to be sold and bought on eBay, even though they sell and buy Mein Kampf. But more than that, the books are not racist books. They have racist images, which could have easily been modified, could have easily been changed. The books themselves don't have racist content in them, unless what we count as racist these days is so watered down that it's meaningless. And yeah, they're not banned. The publisher decided, the state decided not to publish 6 of the books, and a bunch of people went nuts. But the hype around it, the virtue signaling around it, the amount of discussion that people are having around it is something that's going to turn off people from, this progressive wokeness. What am I doing? Okay. And it's, of course, I have to say, it's unbelievably tragic. I know everybody loves to hate California, but California is like the best place in the world to live. It's got the best weather in the world. It actually has some of the best people in the world. It's got some of the best infrastructure in the world. It's an unbelievably productive place. Biotech, technology. And it's not just Silicon Valley. It's biotech in San Diego, but not just biotech. There's a whole chip industry in San Diego. In Orange County, the same thing. And LA has Hollywood. You might hate the movies in Hollywood, but you all go see them, and it's pretty amazing. I don't like LA. LA is my least favorite city. But Orange County is amazing. San Diego is amazing. And the Bay Area is Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is stunning. It's got some of the best farmland in the world. some of the most productive farmland in the world, some of the best fruits and vegetables you can find anywhere. So it's super tragic because it's such a stunning, incredible place. Amazing place where most of the technology that has moved us forward in the world over the last 50 years has come from. Right. Let's see, we've got some California questions. California is choking on leftism. I know people paying $4K a month for one bedroom and have to step over homeless people every time they leave their apartment building. Yeah, in San Francisco and LA, I mean, the homelessness problem is unbelievable. It used to be bad in San Francisco 30 years ago when I lived in the Bay Area. And it's like 10 times worse now. 10 times worse. And LA is really, really bad, and so on. On the other hand, it's got all this amazing stuff. Culture, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. Amazing. Amazing people, amazing stuff. Right? And again, some of the best scenery, some of the best weather, some of the best people. Anyway.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize, I know this is difficult, can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute, that man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it, and that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith?
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right, all right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people, nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it. But at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing, whether you're looking at this. And you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share. And you can support the show at JeronBrooksShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals. and show your support for the work, for the value, hopefully, you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.